Hey folks, in our last video, we talked about our perfect intervals, our perfect unisons, our perfect fourths, perfect fifths, perfect octaves, and then what happens when we either augment or diminish any of those. So when we augment, we raise it by a half step. When we diminish, we lower by a half step. And that means like the top of the interval. So if we take a perfect fourth and we raise up that top interval by a half step, we have augmented. Now we have an augmented fourth. And if we lower it by another half step, we have diminished it. So we had mentioned that in the last video. You can also augment and diminish our other intervals, our seconds, our thirds, our sixths, and our sevenths. They can also be augmented and diminished. Now, we do not see those very often. They don't happen all the time. They're very uncommon, but they do exist. They can exist. What does that look like? So let's take G as our bottom note, and let's make an augmented second. We know that an augmented second, it has to be an A. It can't be a B. Even though we know it's going to sound a lot like a B, we still have to write it on A. So we have 1, 2. We're dealing with a second. Now, in a major scale, a major second is just going to be G to A. Now, if we want to make that major second an augmented second, we are going to raise that up one more half step. So we're going to make that an A sharp. If we wanted to make, this is wild, everybody, this is wild, but let's take our major second. We said G to A, that's our major second, right? If we want to make it a minor second, we make it A flat. And you're thinking, yeah, it doesn't get any smaller than that. I know, guys. This is why we're not going to see augmented or diminished seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths all that often, but they do exist. So G to A double flat is technically a diminished second. Now, you're saying, lady, you're out of your mind. Those are the same note. I know they are. They take up the same key on the piano keyboard. This is rare. This is so rare. You're almost never going to see this. You know who does this? I don't know. Weird composers who want to mess with your brain, because these things just don't happen all that much. Now, does this happen? Yeah, this happens sometimes. We know it happens sometimes. You know when it happens? In our harmonic minor scales, right? We see these. You know them. Right? We know these suckers in our lay, ti, dos. There's our augmented second. They do show up. So you will see an augmented second way more than you're going to see a diminished second. That just like doesn't happen most of the time. But it's okay. We're all going to live. We're going to be fine. But yes, the augmented second shows up every now and again. You can also have augmented thirds. You can have augmented sixths and sevenths. Let's look at what an augmented third would look like. Let's stick with G. I'm liking G right now. So we know we're going to go G, A, B. We're going to be dealing with a B of some kind. G, A, B, that is a normal major third, right? If we want to augment it, make an augmented third, we would make it B sharp. If we took G to B and we made it flat to make it a minor third, and we wanted to make it B double flat, that would be a diminished third. Are we going to get that all that often? No, not really. And honestly, most of the time, instead of writing an augmented third, most composers are going to do what normal people do, and they're going to write a perfect fourth instead, because you might be thinking these are the same. They are, guys. They're the same. But you know what? This is another Jeff. This is another situation where you have J-E-O-F-F and J-E-F-F. You have to spell Jeff with a G's name as G-E-O-F-F. He gets really upset if you don't call him Jeff with a G. You gotta spell his name right. So you can't just call an augmented third a Jeff with a J because it's easier to spell. You have to still call it. You got to call it by its name. So make sure that you're giving Jeff with a G the respect that they deserve, and by labeling them correctly. So you can have augmented seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths.